Prologue. Amberly was only 1 month old when she was abandoned. Her parents decided they couldn't accept what she was, as she was not normal. Amberly was a werewolf. That was to be expected, as her father was a werewolf as well, but something threw a wrench into everything. She was not just a regular werewolf. She carried the mark of the firewolf. Firewolves were scarce creatures on the verge of extinction. They were also very powerful. Their senses were heightened about 10 times more than the average werewolf, and they were about 10 times stronger as well. They could use their fire ability to heal others. They were also held to a higher standard. They never joined a pack, they ran them. To any pack they visited, they were automatically carried to the same standard as the Alpha, no matter the circumstance. The downside was that they healed at the same speed as humans. Kara, a 25-year-old mother of one, was on her usual morning walk when she heard crying. She walked off the pathway a little way to find little Amberly lying in the grass all alone. Kara's heart broke at the sight of the poor child being abandoned. She ran over to her and picked her up. Kara looked down at those big, gray eyes and instantly fell in love. Kara took care of Amberly as if she were her own. While changing her one day, she saw the mark on Amberly's ribs, marking her as the firewolf. Kara was taken aback, but decided not to abandon the child like her birth parents did. Instead, she chose to raise Amberly as a human until she was old enough to be adequately trained. Kara was not new to the werewolf community and was aware that there was a pack not too far away from her. She vowed that when Amberly became of age, she would send her to that pack for training. Chapter 1. Beep beep beep. I grumbled as I rolled over to silence my alarm and look at the clock. 6 a.m. Time to get up. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. I hated waking up so early. Maybe I would be in a better mood if I weren't dreading today's events. Oh, wait, I was. I heard a knock on my door. Yes! A tiny pipsqueak with long golden blonde hair and bright blue eyes, my 6-year-old sister, skipped into my room. Mama's cooking breakfast. She sent me up here to make sure you were waking up. I smiled. Well, you can tell Mama that I'm up and will be down shortly. She nodded and skipped out of my room. I was going to miss that little munchkin. I yawned and stood, letting my brown locks fall down over my shoulders. I walked to my door when I stubbed my toe against my dresser. Darn it! I mumbled, holding my toe. This was going to be a long day. After I showered and dressed, I went downstairs. Look what the cat dragged in, my mother teased as Lexa, my sister, giggled. I snorted. Good morning to you too, Mom. I laughed while I helped Lexa set the table. We ate in silence. I ate more slowly than I usually would, trying to savor the taste of my mother's cooking. She was an amazing cook and had taught me so much. I could cook just about anything now, but not as well as her, of course. I sighed. Are you sure you have enough meat for the next 6 weeks? I looked at my mother and she chuckled. Yes, sweetie, you've outdone yourself with the hunting. We have enough meat for the rest of the year. Don't worry so much, she smiled. I looked back down at my food. It broke my heart knowing I was leaving my family, but I knew I would return. I had no desire to run a pack, and I didn't belong within one, so I would take the training I received and then come back home. What training? Well, my mother had signed me up unwillingly, I should say, to participate in the closest pack's boot camp. She said I would get proper training there, but I had my doubts. My mother looked at the clock. Oh goodness, we're gonna be late. I turned to see that it was 6:20 a.m. and we had to be at the bus station by 6:30 a.m. I leapt up, ran to my room, grabbed my bag, and ran out to the car, where my sister and mother were waiting. I jumped in and we pulled out of the driveway. I took one last look back at my home and committed it to memory. We arrived at the bus station at 6:27 a.m. and I ran inside to get registered while my mother got my bag. The lady at the front desk handed me a name tag with the words Amberly Everwood, student on it. I put it on, then turned and walked over to my mother and sister, who were just now walking in. I picked Lexa up and placed her on my hip. I knew she was 6 and I shouldn't keep doing that, but she wasn't heavy to me, and she seemed to enjoy it. I looked to my mother. I don't know if I'm ready for this. My mother rubbed my back to comfort me and smiled. Nonsense. You will be just fine. You're a strong girl. I know you can get through it. I smiled and hugged her. I could feel my wolf, Stone, purr in my mother's embrace. She loved her just as much as I did. My mother suddenly looked at me seriously and tapped my side where my ribs were, where my mark was. Don't forget about this. No one is to see this, okay? I nodded. I know, Mother. She smiled and I smiled back. I'm going to miss you guys so much. We're gonna miss you too, sweetie. Now go, you have a bus to catch. Call us when you can. I nodded and set Lexa down to hug her. I love you, Wolfie, she whispered in my ear. I smiled. I love you too, Pipsqueak. I stood and walked over to the large group of teens with the same name tags as mine. Before boarding the bus, I took one more look at my family. They waved and smiled. I waved back and climbed aboard. I set my bag above me, then took a seat in the front. I had just left my family, yet I already missed them. I hoped they would be okay. My thoughts were cut off when a red-headed, blue-eyed girl plopped down next to me. Hi there. My name's Mabel. I smiled at her half-heartedly. I'm Amberly, nice to meet you. She smiled back at me. So, what's brought you here? I raised my eyebrow at her. Probably the same reason everyone else was brought here. My phone suddenly buzzed. I took it out to see a text from my mother. Have a safe bus ride. I smiled and replied, thanks, then put my phone away. That your boyfriend? Huh. She wiggled her eyebrows playfully, and I laughed. It was my mother. I don't have a boyfriend, as you call it. She placed a hand on her chest with her jaw wide open. But you're so beautiful. And you haven't found your mate. I blushed because of the unexpected compliment, then cocked my head to the side. Mate? She raised an eyebrow. Yeah, your mate. You know, the one the moon goddess has destined you to be with. She looked at me like I was crazy. I remembered my mother mentioning mates at one point, but she didn't explain what they were. Oh, was my only reply. Don't worry, there's gonna be a lot of handsome men here. Maybe you'll find him here. I laughed as she playfully elbowed me. I don't know about you, but I'm hoping to catch the eye of one of those handsome alphas. I laughed, then my brow creased. Wait, there's gonna be more than one alpha there? She nodded. There will be the Blackmoon Pack alpha there, of course, but he recruits other alphas to help him teach the classes. I nodded. That made sense. Well, good luck to you. I'm not hoping to catch anyone's eye. I don't really want a boyfriend or a mate. I didn't really know the difference, but I knew what happened in a relationship, and that meant someone who would see my mark. That couldn't happen. She shrugged. Suit yourself. We spent the rest of the bus ride just talking. This girl was quite crazy, but she was hilarious. I could definitely see myself becoming friends with her. Chapter 2. The bus ride took about 6 hours, but we finally arrived, the bus pulling up to a large building. We all grabbed our bags and got off the bus, and I walked into the building with Mabel. It was a large lobby, and I saw that 5 tables were set up, organized by last name. I carried my bag on my shoulder as I walked over to the first table. As I waited in line, I looked around. This was definitely the most prominent building I had ever been in. Before this, the most prominent building was the grocery store, only 5 miles down the road from home. It had a gorgeous chandelier with lovely crystals hanging from the ceiling. The whole place looked very expensive. It was finally my turn, and I walked up to the lady at the table. She had short black hair, chocolate brown eyes, and was a little on the heavier side. Name? Amberly. She raised her eyebrow at me. Everwood, sorry. She checked down her list, took a highlighter, and marked out my name. She then handed me a packet of papers and a room key. Get settled in your room and read this over. It's the rules and regulations that the alphas will expect you to follow. Be ready and dressed in nice attire and be down in the cafeteria by 2 p.m. for lunch and a meeting. We were supposed to bring lovely attire? Whoops. I nodded my head and took the items. I looked at the keychain, room 204. Darn, it would probably be helpful to know where the rooms were. I walked around aimlessly for a little while, looking over the paperwork. Suddenly, I heard someone call my name. Amberly. I looked up to see Mabel walking over with her paperwork. I smiled as she waved her key in the air. Looks like we're gonna be roomies. Wow, I said as I walked into our room. It was immaculate and organized, with an exquisite yet darker color scheme and a massive window to the side. There were 2 beds in the room and a small table with a lamp between them. Wow indeed, Mabel said as she entered the room. I looked around, then became confused. Where's the bathroom? Oh, it's down the hallway. We passed it on the way up. Wow, I had become more oblivious than usual. Oh, okay, thanks. So, which bed do you want? She shrugged. I don't really care. I smiled and grabbed the bed closest to the window. I liked being able to see out into the night. I checked the clock. It was 1 p.m. I sighed and began looking through my bag. I swore I didn't recall any paperwork telling me that I needed nice attire, so I didn't bring any. Great. I decided on jeans and the best shirt that I brought, an off-the-shoulder pink shirt with a golden necklace. Mabel looked over at the clothes I had laid out and made a face. You're wearing that? I thought they said nice attire. I sighed. This is the best I brought with me. Mabel looked at me with a face like, really? Then she shook her head and went into her bag, pulling out a simple yet elegant spaghetti-strapped white dress that would stop right above my knees. She threw it at me. Here, wear this. I don't want you getting in trouble on the first day. I have shoes to go with it also, she smiled. My brow creased as I looked at her. Are you sure? I really don't mind wearing this. I pointed to my clothes. She shook her head. Nope, you're wearing the dress, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Besides, that dress is a little snug on me anyway, so it should fit you perfectly. I nodded. Thanks, really, I appreciate it. She smiled and went back to her bag to pull out a simple, long red skirt and a black, tight-fitting shirt. We changed into our clothes. I stuck to the corner, making sure that my mark was hidden from sight. I went back into my bag and pulled out a brush to try to tame the beast on top of my head, deciding just to let the brown locks hang down to the middle of my back. Then I pulled out what little makeup I wore, which mostly consisted of mascara and a little eyeliner, and applied it. I then placed everything back into my bag, deciding to unpack later since it was about 1:45 p.m. now. I turned around and saw Mabel holding a pair of golden, 3-inch heels. Heels? This girl was trying to kill me. I reluctantly put the heels on, stood, and walked about 5 feet before rolling my ankle and tumbling to the ground. Darn it, I mumbled as I rubbed my ankle, while Mabel was silently laughing in the corner. Girl, for a wolf, you sure are clumsy. Here, let me get you some flats, she said through her giggles. She handed me a pair of white and blue flats, and I slipped them on. Much better, thank you. I smiled as I handed her back the heels. We gathered our things and headed out the door, down to the cafeteria. Chapter 3. We entered the already filled cafeteria, and I was almost immediately hit with the most intoxicating scent I had ever smelled in my life. It smelled so sweet that I just took deep breaths to savor it. Even my wolf took notice. Goodness, what is that amazing smell? Mabel sniffed the air. I don't smell anything out of the ordinary. You're probably smelling the amazing food over there. Let's go get in line. I didn't have to be told twice. I was starving. We put our stuff down at a table near the back, then headed to the line. We were talking in line when 2 guys approached us. Both were instead built and very muscular. One had dirty blonde hair that was shaved pretty close to his head and striking green eyes, while the other one had black hair that covered his forehead and brown eyes. The green-eyed boy spoke first. Hello, ladies. Mind if we join you at your table? I looked over at Mabel, who was blatantly staring at the brown-eyed boy. I sighed. That's fine with me. The green-eyed boy smiled. My name's Blake, and this is my friend Loger. He gestured to the brown-eyed boy, who was stuck in his own little bubble along with my friend. Amberly, and this is Mabel. I gestured to her, and she didn't even look up. Blake smiled. Well, it's nice to meet you. We stood in line talking while we grabbed our food and took our seats. I sat between Mabel, who was paying me no mind, and Blake. I was still very distracted by that wonderful smell, although I couldn't determine its source. It continued to flood my senses to the point it was almost irritating. Stone whined softly. Mabel finally acknowledged me for the first time since we sat down. Look, Amberly, the alphas are here. I looked over and saw 10 handsome guys walk in and take their seats at a reserved table away from everyone. I heard Mabel whistle. Wow, we sure lucked out, didn't we? She laughed, and I slapped her arm playfully. Stop that. She laughed at me and continued eating. It was then that I noticed Blake was sitting just a little too close for comfort. My wolf growled lowly, and I cleared my throat and shifted away from him. He saw and shifted a little closer to me. I was not someone who liked their personal space invaded, so I went to say something when I was interrupted by a charming sound. Hello, students, said the voice. The cafeteria was silent in almost an instant. There was a specific tone, a very authoritative tone, that said you better shut up and listen. Yet it was still such an incredible sound. All I wanted was for this person to continue talking. I looked up to see a large, built man standing beside the Alpha's table. He had short black hair and a very rigid jawline. He looked like the artwork of a god, yet he looked intimidating enough to stop even the worst of enemies dead in their tracks. No wonder he was the Alpha. My name is Felton, Alpha of the Blackmoon Pack. I hope you have all settled in well. You will still have time to enjoy the food and socialize. I just wanted to make you aware that you need to be dressed in workable clothing and be in the gymnasium at 5 p.m. for evaluation. We will give you more details then. Carry on. And with that, the handsome man took his place back at the Alpha's table. Alpha Felton. The name just seemed to roll off my tongue perfectly, and yet that put a very unsettling feeling in my stomach, and I didn't understand why. As everyone continued talking around me, I began to get thirsty. I grabbed my plastic cup and rose to go get some water. I'll be right back, I said to Blake, and he nodded. I walked over to the water container and tried to figure out how to get water to come out. I pressed the little button and nothing happened. What the? I kept holding the button down until finally, water came out. I could still smell that wonderful scent, and it seemed to be getting stronger. I waited until my cup was filled up, then turned to go back to my table, when suddenly I ran smack into a wall, spilling my water. Wait, that wasn't a wall. That was someone's chest. I looked up to meet the eyes of the one and only Alpha Felton. It took me a second to realize I had spilt my water all down his shirt. I blushed crimson red. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Here, let me help. I frantically put the cup down, then grabbed a set of napkins and attempted to dry his shirt. Then I realized how awkward this probably looked, me just rubbing the Alpha's chest with napkins, yet I felt tingles in my skin where I was touching his chest. Odd. He raised an eyebrow at me, and I stopped and handed him the napkins. I'm really sorry, Alpha. I didn't really know what to do, so I just walked away, my head down and my face the color of blood. Yep, that definitely made the list of my most embarrassing moments. I could see Mabel out of the corner of my eye, dying of laughter. Chapter 4. No, it wasn't. Oh yes, it was. I groaned and lay back on the bed, curling into a ball. It was not funny, Mabel. It was humiliating. You should have seen his face, he was angry. Come on, it wasn't that bad. I mumbled to myself and rolled over, turning my back to her. I don't want to go back down there. But you have to, it's evaluation. I growled lowly to myself. Fine. I grabbed a pair of workout leggings and a black tank top to change into. I went over to my little corner to change, keeping my mark hidden. I didn't even bother with shoes. I went over to the mirror and threw my hair up into a ponytail to keep it out of my face. I looked over to Mabel, who was waiting by the door. Ready? I sighed. As ready as I'll ever be. She laughed. Oh, come on, it won't be as bad as you think. I rolled my eyes, and we set out to find the gymnasium. We got to the gym, and I was immediately hit with that amazing smell again. I had to find the source of it. It was going to drive me and my wolf crazy. We found a seat on the floor as we waited for others to arrive. All the Alphas were standing in the front, including Alpha Felton, who had changed his shirt. I looked down, hoping he wouldn't spot me. He looked around at everyone who was already there, and I tried to keep my head down, even though I couldn't help but stare. His shirt was more tight-fitting, accentuating his very muscular torso. It was then that our eyes met, and I instantly looked away, embarrassed once again for being caught staring, but I could still feel his eyes on me. More people arrived, and the gym began to fill up. I spotted Blake and Logar walking in and waved them over. Logar walked straight over to Mabel and sat next to her while Blake plopped down next to me. "Hey AMV, I see you've gotten dried off," he said with a smile. I blushed wildly. Why did he have to bring that up? He laughed. "Sorry, didn't mean to embarrass you," he continued, laughing as I slapped his arm, but started laughing myself. Okay, maybe it was a little funny. I looked over to see Alpha Felton glaring at us. Goodness, what had I done now? A few minutes went by as one of the other alphas cleared his throat, silencing the gym. "Hello students, my name is Christopher, Alpha of the Forest Green Pack. This evening we will be pairing you up with someone of the same sex and having you fight them. When you come up to fight, you will say your first and last name and your age. We will be evaluating the fights and splitting everyone up into 10 different groups. That will be your training group. Your group will also be assigned to one of us as we will be your trainers. Are there any questions?" Everyone stayed silent, so Alpha Christopher called up the first two to fight. It was two males. "Say your names." They spoke their names. No shifting. "We are testing your hand-to-hand combat. No low blows or fatal hits. Do you understand these terms?" The boys nodded as the Alpha sat back with the others. "Fight." The boys tackled each other to the ground and wrestled. The fight lasted less than 5 minutes while the Alphas wrote on their papers. This cycle continued, going back and forth between the girl group and the guy group, and I started to lose interest. This didn't concern me. I had fought rogues much larger than the girls here, so I didn't believe today would be too challenging. I sniffed the air, breathing in that wonderful scent once again. I began thinking about my mother and sister. I hoped they were doing okay. I knew my sister would be home from school right now, and I wondered what trouble she had found herself in. I smiled at the thought. She always was a little troublemaker. Mabel hit my arm, bringing me back to what was happening. I looked at her, confused, when she gestured to the Alphas. They were pointing me out to come up next. I leapt up and made my way over to the mat where the other girl stood. I looked up at her. She was tall, with blonde hair up in a bun and dark brown eyes. She looked me up and down and smirked. Oh, I was going to enjoy this. Sheena Green, 19, I heard her say. Amberly Everwood, 18. The Alphas wrote our names down, then looked to Christopher. No shifting, no low blows or fatal hits. Do you understand these terms? We nodded. Christopher joined the rest of the Alphas. Fight. The fight lasted all of 10 seconds. This Sheena girl obviously had no idea how to fight. She ran at me to throw a punch, and I grabbed her fist, turned, and flipped her onto her back on the mat. She groaned and went to get up when I punched her straight in the nose. She flew back, then tried to get up again, but decided against it and bowed her head, showing her surrender. I smirked at her and looked to the Alphas, who were writing something on their papers. I bowed my head in respect, then made my way back to Mabel and the others. Mabel patted me on the back. Great job. I smiled a thanks at her, then looked up to be met with Alpha Felton's eyes. It was hard to tell, but it looked like he was smirking. Time went on, and one by one Mabel, Logar, and Blake were called up to fight. Logar and Blake seemed to take down their opponents without too much struggle, while Mabel had met her match. I patted her back when she came to sit back down. It's okay, you'll get them next time. Eventually, I was called back up to fight again. This started to become a routine. I was called up, fought for about 10 seconds, then sat back down. I had yet to be hit. I was called up for the last fight of the night. I made my way to the mat and looked at my final opponent. She was the same height and size as me, but had hazel eyes and short brown hair. Halsey Turner, 18. Amberly Everwood, 18. No shifting, no low blows or fatal hits. Do you understand? Christopher was cut off when Halsey swung a punch at me, hitting me square in the nose. Before Christopher could step between us, I lunged at Halsey, tackling her to the ground. She attempted to throw me off, but I flipped her onto her stomach and pinned her. I grabbed her hair and pulled her head up, slamming her face into the mat 3 times. I went to do it a 4th time, but she whined and exposed her neck, showing surrender. I got off her, wiped the blood away from my nose, and looked at the Alphas, who were rather stunned by Halsey's actions. I nodded my head in respect and went back to my spot, leaving my opponent on the ground. Her friends came to help her as one of the alphas went over to her and took her out of the gym. I assumed he was taking her to the nurse. I smirked. Alpha Felton cleared his throat. You will all be evaluated and given your new uniforms either tonight or tomorrow morning. These uniforms will symbolize what group you are in, and you are required to wear them at all times unless stated otherwise. Curfew is at 9 p.m., and you are not permitted to leave the room after that time. You are to be in the cafeteria at 7:30 a.m. for breakfast, then be with your groups by 8:30 a.m. You are dismissed. I have no idea what this man just said. I was too distracted by the lovely sound of his voice even to catch what he was saying. Oh well, I would find out from Mabel later. Everyone stood and began talking as they slowly left the gym. I stood up and stretched when I heard snarling behind me. I turned around to see Halsey's friends walking by, glaring at me. I raised my eyebrow at them as they continued walking. How mature. I got to the door when I heard that lovely voice again. Miss Everwood? I turned to see the god of a man in front of me. Alpha Felton. I cleared my throat. Yes, Alpha. He handed me a bag filled with clothes, my uniform. You have impressed me tonight, so you have been assigned to my group for training. You are to be in workroom number 3 tomorrow morning by 8:30 a.m. sharp, not a minute later. Is that understood? My wolf purred in appreciation. Me? I've impressed the Alpha? That was a first. I took a breath in. Him. That lovely smell was his scent. The smell had clouded my senses again, removing my ability to make words, so I just nodded and, of course, just continued to stand there. My wolf was begging me to reach out and touch him, but I snapped at her, resisting. He raised his eyebrow. Do you need anything else, Miss Everwood? I couldn't help but blush. I loved the way he said my name. I shook my head, turned, and walked away, my wolf growling at me to turn back around and run to him. I rolled my eyes. Don't you feel it? Stone whined. Feel what? I asked, confused. That connection. He is our mate. She practically screamed at me. My face froze. There was that word again, mate. I still didn't entirely understand what a mate was. I mean, of course, I knew it was someone you were supposed to be with, but I didn't really understand how the process worked. Did I give him something? Did I tell him? Did he already know? I didn't understand. I walked back into my room, headed straight for my bed, and closed my eyes, letting sleep take over. Chapter 5. Rise and Shine. Mabel yelled as she pulled back the curtains from the window, letting the sun shine in, right into my eyes. I groaned and covered my head. 5 more minutes. She laughed. Sorry, but it's already 6:30 a.m. I growled lowly as I got out of bed. I was not a morning person, and apparently Mabel was. I grabbed my shower stuff and headed down to the bathrooms, where the showers were. I got undressed in the stall so that no one saw my mark, and I washed myself. I washed and conditioned my hair, then got out, wrapped myself in a towel, and walked back to my room. Yes, I had grabbed everything but my uniform, so I had to walk back in my towel. I was just thankful there were no guys rooming in this hallway. I walked into my room to find it empty. Good, Mabel must still be in the shower. I drew the curtains closed and dropped my towel. I put on the uniform, then looked in the mirror. The uniform consisted of a red and black striped shirt that hugged my curves like a second skin and tight pants that had a red stripe down the side of both legs. On the back of the shirt, it said Alpha F. I heard someone unlock the door and walk in. By the scent, I could tell it was Mabel. She whistled. Girl, that makes you look hot as hell. I laughed. Yeah, right, thanks though. She smiled and went over to her bag. I looked at the time, it was 7:15 a.m., still too early to head to breakfast. I lay back down on the bed. Don't you fall back asleep, I will leave you here. Mabel snapped. I ignored her. All too soon, I had to drag myself off my bed to head down to breakfast with Mabel. She was wearing a similar uniform to mine, but hers was dark blue and black with the name Alpha T on the back. We walked into the cafeteria to see that it was only half full. We headed over to the line when we spotted Blake and Loger. Mabel waved at Loger shyly and smiled. I elbowed her. So you and Loger, huh? I wiggled my eyebrows, and she blushed crimson red. He's definitely cute, and we have a lot of the same interests. I smiled, happy for her. We got our food and sat down to eat when something grabbed my attention. That smell. He was in here. I looked around and saw that all the alphas had taken their spots at their table, the same one they sat at yesterday. I noticed that all of them were wearing similar shirts, but different colors. They all had trainer on the back. I admired how the shirt showed off his muscular physique. It should really be illegal to look that handsome. I heard Mabel giggle and I turned to look at her. She smirked. Seems like someone's gawking at the alpha's table. She raised her eyebrow. I rolled my eyes. I was not gawking, I was just looking around. Her mouth curled into a sassy smile. I looked back down at my food, but I couldn't help but laugh at her. I looked at the clock, 8:15 a.m. Might as well head over to the workroom. I said goodbye to Mabel and headed out. It was a shame that we weren't in the same group. I was hoping I would know at least one other person in there. I found the hallway my room was on and walked down, only to suddenly face a dilemma. Was it workroom number 2 or number 3? I walked into workroom number 2 to see 2 people kissing. Ugh. Okay, it was definitely workroom number 3. I walked into workroom number 3 to find a group of boys already warming up. They were all wearing the same type of uniform as I was. They all looked over at me and smirked. Some whistled. Some just blatantly stared. I decided to stand in the back by myself until I heard someone walk over. Hey there, princess. I looked up to see a dirty blonde, shaggy-haired boy with hazel eyes lazily walk over to me. What's a pretty little thing like you doing in here? I raised my eyebrow and turned around, showing him the name on the back of my shirt, proving that I was in this group. His eyes got wide. You must be some scrapper, princess. He winked, and I about got sick. Thanks, but if you don't mind, I don't feel so good. I just want to be left alone, I tried to say nicely. He frowned. Trying to get rid of me already, princess? Alright, I guess I'll see you around. He walked off, and I let out a sigh and looked at the clock, 8:29 a.m. I looked around. Oh dear, please don't tell me I'm the only girl in this group. Alpha Felton walked in at 8:30 a.m. on the dot, not a second late. Everyone took a seat in front of him, waiting for instructions. I sat in the very back of the group. Good morning, students. Today we are going to be doing a few rounds of fighting. Yesterday was to break you up into groups, now it's to focus on what each of you struggles with. So I will pair each of you up and we will go from there. He signaled for us to move to the side, and he rolled a mat out and called out the first 2 guys to fight. He watched intently as the 2 fought, taking notes on a piece of paper. Once one guy surrendered, he was told to rejoin us, while the winner went to the other side of the room. Time went by before he called my name. I joined my opponent at the mat. He smirked at me. Don't worry, sugar, I won't go too rough with you. He winked at me, and I had to fight the extreme urge to slap him across the face. I swore out of the corner of my eye I saw Felton glare at the guy, but then he regained his composure. He gave us the go, and before the other guy could even blink, he was lying on the ground, my arm around his neck. He surrendered in a matter of seconds. I let him go and smirked as he rose, trying to control his breathing. I joined the other winners at the side of the room while hearing some gasps, and I swore I saw Felton fighting a smile. Time continued to go by, and after everyone had fought, we were split into 2 groups. Felton went over to the other group first, then paired them off and assigned each a section of the mat. Then he came over to my group and began sharing the notes he had taken. Then he began pairing everyone off, everyone but me. He began to walk away when I approached him. Alpha Felton? I don't have a partner. He put his papers and pen down and turned to me. I am aware. Considering we have an odd number of students and your skills far exceed our expectations, you will be fighting me. Wait, what? Chapter 6. I stood there staring at him like an idiot. I must have heard him wrong. Fight him? An alpha? I had no problem fighting anyone here. Hell, I wouldn't have a problem fighting his beta. But him? I had never fought an alpha before. Are you sure about this? I asked him, and he chuckled. What's wrong? Afraid of a little competition. He smirked. I raised an eyebrow. Bring it on. Why? Of all the things that I could have said, why did I say that? I blamed him. If he didn't smell so good all the time, maybe my senses wouldn't be so fogged up. We made our way to the center of the mat, as the other students fought around us. Some stopped to watch us, but ended up getting hit by their opponents. Served them right. Felton stood in front of me, looking down at me. He was so tall, probably a good foot taller than me. Your move, Amberly. That was the first time he had called me by my first name, and it momentarily shocked me. He smirked and took the opportunity to grab my arm and flip me onto my back. I groaned but leapt back up in a second. First mistake. Never let your opponent distract you. I narrowed my eyes and went to punch him. He grabbed my fist and slung my arm away. I went to punch him again, knowing that he would hold my fist again, but this time I opened my hand, grabbed his hand, and slung him over my shoulder and onto his back. I had to use a lot of willpower to ignore the tingles that touching him sent through my body. I could tell my wolf was clearly unhappy that we were fighting our mate, but I just ignored her. Felton leapt back up gracefully and turned his attention back to me. He shook his head slightly, like he was trying to clear it. I took the opportunity to lunge at him, tackling him to the ground. I pinned him to the floor, trying to hold him there, but he used one of his legs to knock me off and rolled over, pinning me down instead. I struggled and was able to free one hand, punching him in the gut. This made him let go of my other hand, and I shoved him off and leapt up. He huffed out a breath, but stood as well. My wolf was scratching at me to get out. I could feel it on my mark. Anytime my wolf tried to take over, I felt pain where my mark was. I cringed at the sensation, but did my best to push the thought aside. We circled each other for a while before I tried to grab his arms and take his feet out from under him. Keyword, try. He ended up getting out of my hold and picked me up by my waist. I struggled to break free but failed. I believed it was because part of me didn't want to break free. My wolf was almost purring with happiness at being in his hands, even if we were fighting. I sighed, realizing there was no way I was getting out of his hold, and bowed my head, surrendering. He smirked and put me down, and, almost reluctantly, let me go. You put up quite a fight, Amberly. My biggest note to you is don't get distracted, and always keep your guard up. I nodded, listening to his voice. Thank you, Alpha. He smiled. Please call me Felton. You did what? Mabel stared at me, jaw wide open. You heard me. I fought him, I said, taking a bite out of a strawberry. And did you win? I looked at her incredulously. Yes, Mabel, I beat the Alpha, I said, sarcasm heavy in my voice. She rolled her eyes. Well, what did he say afterwards? I shrugged. Told me I was quite a fighter and even asked me to call him Felton. Mabel almost choked on her food. And Alpha asked you to call him by his first name? I nodded, taking a sip of water. She narrowed her eyes, then smirked. He likes you. Now I was the one choking on my food. I looked at Mabel. You are absolutely ridiculous. He's probably got some beautiful mate back at his pack house. It broke my heart to say those words. My wolf growled at me, and I felt the sting in my mark. I cringed a little and wrapped my arms around myself so I could rub my mark while trying to look casual about it. Mabel shook her head. The only mated alphas here are Christopher, Troyan, Alec, and Cadden. So technically, Felton is a single man. She elbowed me playfully, and I laughed. Now you're being beyond ridiculous. I'll be right back. I'm getting something to drink. I stood and walked over to the water container. I looked over to see the Alpha table empty. I shrugged, slightly saddened, and filled my cup up. I went to walk back to my table when someone grabbed a fistful of my hair and slammed my head into the wall, knocking me out instantly. I should really stop getting water. Chapter 7. My head was pounding and my stomach was killing me. What the hell happened? I opened my eyes and surveyed my surroundings. It looked like I was in the nurse's office. I sat up on the bed and rubbed my forehead. The nurse walked in. Hello, Miss Everwood. How are you feeling? I looked up at her. Like I got hit by a truck. She looked at me, confused, but handed me a small container of painkillers. I'm guessing that your healing speed is slower than usual, so here are some painkillers for now. It's a week's worth. Take 2 a day and you should be fine. I nodded and stood. I immediately felt dizzy, so I placed my hand back on the bed to try to catch my balance. Once again, keyword, try. I still lost my balance and began to fall back. I landed right into someone's arms, and I could tell by the tingles shooting through my body like fireworks just who it was. I looked up and caught myself staring into those striking blue eyes as I was lifted back to my feet. Are you okay? Do you need me to get the nurse again? He looked at me worriedly. I shook my head but held on to his arms to keep my balance. I couldn't help but notice he had very nice biceps. No, I'll be okay. Just give me a second. He continued to look worried as I found my balance. I looked up at him and smiled. I'm okay now, thanks. He gave me a toothy smile back. He had a gorgeous smile, then his face turned serious. Do you have any idea of who would have done this to you? I thought, but shook my head. No, I don't have any enemies that I know of here. I could hear him growl angrily. I will do my best to find out who did this to you. It was out of line and not within the boundaries of the classroom. I nodded. Thank you, but really, I'm okay now. Good. Do you want to go back to your room? My brow creased. Did he really ask that? He raised an eyebrow. I mean, do you want to go rest? I raised my eyebrows and nodded, blushing. He smirked, turned, and headed to the door, opening it for me. Felton walked back to my room with me, making sure that I got there without collapsing to the ground. I got back to my room and realized I didn't have my key. Darn, I think I locked my key in there, I said, slightly irritated. He pulled a set of keys out of his pocket and unlocked my door. I looked up at him, confused. He held the key up. Master key. I nodded and walked inside. Thank you for walking me. I appreciate it. I smiled and he smiled back. You're excused from class this evening and tomorrow if you need it. Just call me if you need anything, Amberly. I nodded at him. Thank you, Felton. I heard his breath hitch and he closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. They were darker than they were before. He shook his head again. Have a good day, Miss Everwood. He then walked down the hallway and left. The next day, I decided to take the day off. My head was still pounding and my stomach was in knots. I took the free time that I had to call my mother. Hello. Hey Mom, it's Amberly. We talked for about an hour and I told her everything that had happened so far. I even told her how I fought one of the alphas. Did you beat him? No, Mom, but I didn't make it easy either, I said with a smile. That's my girl. She laughed. I decided to ask a question that had been looming in my mind. Mom, what's a mate? Her laughter instantly stopped. Why, honey? Has something happened? Well, no, but I think that I might have found mine. She stayed silent. And he's an alpha, I added nervously. Her breath hitched. Has he marked you yet? No, I don't think so. Wait, what do you mean marked? She let out a huge sigh. Sweetie, whatever you do, don't let him mark you. Not until we can get this worked out. Why, Mom? What does it mean? And work what out? She was leaving me with more questions than answers. She took a deep breath. Honey, once your mate marks you, the mating process begins. It would only be a matter of time before things happened. And that means he would see your mark. My breath hitched. No, that was unacceptable. That could never happen. Sweetie, just try and avoid him for now, okay? I looked down and sighed. I didn't know if I could avoid him. I loved just being around him, but Mother knows best, I guessed. Okay, Mom. I could hear in her voice that she had relaxed. Okay, honey. Well, I've got to bring Lexa to school. Have a good day. I love you. I smiled. Love you too, Mom. I hung up. I decided to go for a little nature walk. We had all been cooped up inside the training building and hadn't been outside since we got there. I walked outside. The woods surrounded us from every direction. I walked at a slow pace, enjoying the scenery. The sky was a beautiful blue, and the green of the leaves contrasted with it. I listened. I could hear a creek flowing, birds chirping, bugs flying around, squirrels running, and someone walking up behind me. Young lady, what do you think you're doing out here? I turned around to see Alpha Christopher with his arms crossed. He didn't look happy. I'm just taking a walk, Alpha. Shouldn't you be in class? Alpha Felton has excused me for today. I had to go to the nurse's office yesterday because someone smashed my head against the wall during lunch. He nodded. Okay, but you need to come back into the training building. You aren't supposed to be out here unsupervised. I nodded and walked over to him, and we went back into the building. I guessed I was trapped in here all day. Great. Chapter 8. I was about to die of boredom. I had probably paced my room back and forth about 1,000 times now. I had organized my bag, then reorganized it. I had cleaned up the room. Now I just lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, and it wasn't even lunchtime. I counted how many tiles were on the ceiling. 247. That was a lot of tiles. I decided to count them again. Nope, still 247. I didn't know why I expected it to change. I heard a knock on the door and I leapt up, excited that Mabel had come by. I opened the door, but it wasn't Mabel standing there. It was Blake. Blake? What are you doing up here? How did you know this was my room? He smiled. Mabel told me. I just wanted to come check on you since you weren't at breakfast this morning. What happened to your head? He touched the knot on my head and I cringed. Oh, sorry. I nodded. Well, I appreciate you coming by, but I've got to get back to doing important stuff. I went to shut the door, but he put his foot in the doorway. You're not getting rid of me that easily, Amberly. I looked at him confused. What do you? I was interrupted when Blake crashed his lips against mine. I tried to pull back, but he put one hand behind my head and wrapped his other arm around my waist. My wolf snarled angrily, and I felt a painful shock come from my mark. I cried out and shoved Blake off of me, slamming the door. I leaned against the door, holding my ribs, trying to calm down. More pain came, and it was burning so bad that I was in tears. I could feel my skin heating up. Oh no, I had to get out of here. I flung the door open and sprinted down the hallway. I ran down the stairs and sprinted out the door of the building and into the woods. When I entered the woods, I took my clothes off and shifted. Stone was a beautiful midnight black wolf with glowing red eyes. We ran and ran until I felt the flames come. It started at my snout. The flame blasted over my fur like a shockwave, covering me from my snout to the tip of my tail. I left a trail of smoke behind me as I sprinted through the forest, burning everything in my path. After taking down several deer, Stone calmed down and we walked to a nearby creek. We drank from the creek as I felt the fire dying out. Now we were just a normal-looking black wolf again. We trotted back the way we came and searched for my clothes. Once we found them, I shifted back and got dressed. I came walking out of the woods when that wonderful smell hit me. I looked up to see a heartbroken Felton with his arms crossed. Amberly, I thought Christopher told you not to be out here unsupervised, he said in his authoritative tone. I looked down. He did, but... No buts. You defied a direct order from one of the alphas. That is against the rules. I continued to look down. I'm sorry, Alpha. He sighed. You will help me clean up the workroom after every class for the rest of the week. Now go eat lunch, then go upstairs and put your uniform on. Since you're well enough to go running around in the woods, you're well enough to come to class. I nodded. Yes, Alpha. Chapter 9. I walked into the cafeteria, about to starve. They had good food out, as usual, and I layered my plate. I looked over to see Mabel sitting with Logar and Blake, who was staring me down like a hawk. I sighed and took a seat at an empty table in the front of the cafeteria, on the other side of the room, closer to the Alpha table. Should I tell Felton what Blake did? I felt it was entirely out of line and extremely violating. I had never kissed anyone before, and Blake just stole that from me. I hated him for that. I picked at my food, suddenly realizing that I had lost my appetite. My mark from earlier felt sore, but I was used to it. I decided that since I wasn't going to eat, and I couldn't stand Blake's blatant staring anymore, I would change into my uniform. Considering everyone else was wearing theirs, and I was wearing gym shorts and a t-shirt, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I got up, threw my plate away, and headed up to my room. I changed into my uniform and made it to the workroom just in time for class. I got the usual stares and winks, but nobody approached me. Felton walked in and began giving us instructions. He told each person what they needed to work on and paired them with someone who could help, and vice versa. Everyone except 2 boys and, of course, me. He pulled us aside. "You 3 are my strongest skilled fighters that I have. You have impressed me fighting one-on-one against another opponent, but now I want to see what you can do against 2. You will each take turns fighting 2 opponents. I will observe you when I am not helping other groups, but you will continue fighting even when I'm not watching. You know the rules. No shifting, low blows, or fatal hits. Mavis, you're up first." We nodded and took a section of the mat that was unoccupied. Mavis stepped in front of us, facing us. He threw a punch at the other guy, who dodged it. Since his rib cage was exposed, I sent a chop straight to the ribs. He grabbed his ribs in pain as the other guy swept his feet out from under him, but Mavis grabbed him and slammed him on his back while he fell to the ground. He went to get up, but I tackled him back down and pinned him to the ground while the other guy grabbed his neck, not hard enough to choke him, but enough to keep his head still. He tried to kick me off, but he just wasn't strong enough. He growled but bowed his head in submission. I got off him while the other kid let go of his neck. Seriously? That was too easy. We decided that I should go next. We took the same positions as before, but I was facing both of them. The first boy, who I found out is named Mitchell, took a swing at me. I grabbed his fist and flipped him onto his back. I tried to pin him to the ground, but Mavis knocked me off. I leapt up and punched him in the gut. I could sense Mitchell coming up behind me, so I turned and threw my foot up, kicking him in the face, causing him to do a backflip and land on his back. He went to get up, but I tackled him to the ground. Just then, Mavis decided to pull the same move that I did on him and chopped me in the ribs, right on my mark. I cried out in pain and clutched my side as Mitchell took this opportunity to kick me off of him. I landed with a smack on the ground as I tried to contain the fire that was threatening to come out. I bowed my head in submission as I tried to stand up. Another burst of pain. I collapsed back to the ground as my vision started getting hazy. I felt Mitchell and Mavis trying to help me up, but as soon as they touched me, they yelled out in pain from the heat of my skin. I took a few deep breaths as I tried to reason with my wolf, tried to get her to calm down. A few minutes passed and she listened, and the pain eased up. I slowly rose as Felton walked back into the room after talking with one of the other alphas. He ran over to help me up, wrapping an arm around my waist. Once again, I felt those familiar tingles, and I welcomed them. "Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" I took a deep breath and shook my head. I'm all right now. Just no more blows to the ribs." He looked at me worriedly, but let me go. Class ended shortly after my little episode, and Felton excused me from helping after class, saying I needed to get some rest. I headed back to my room, and guess who I just happened to bump into? Blake. "Hey, Amberly." He smiled and waved. I attempted to walk past him, but he grabbed my waist and pushed me against the wall. "It's not nice to ignore people," he said while he ran his fingers across my cheek. I tried to pull away, but he held me still. "Oh, little Amberly, you're so cute when you struggle." He gently moved my hair and began trailing kisses down my neck. "I know you saw me in the cafeteria today. Were you avoiding me?" he asked between kisses. I attempted to push him off, but today's events had unfortunately left me weaker than I usually was from lack of energy. "Blake, please don't do this. I don't want this." I heard him laugh lowly. "You don't know you want it yet because you've never had it. Believe me, when I'm done with you, you'll be begging me for more." He chuckled as he started kissing down my collarbone. "Blake, get off of me." I screamed in hopes someone would hear. And someone did. I heard a loud, furious growl, and suddenly, Blake was picked up off his feet and thrown down the hallway. Blake grumbled, but seeing who it was, turned and ran. Felton looked at me. "Are you all right?" I just looked up at him. This guy just saved me from whatever that boy had in mind for me, and I was so thankful. Without even thinking, I threw my arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. He seemed taken aback, but didn't hesitate to wrap his arms around my waist. I heard a low growl come from deep in his chest, and I could have sworn I heard the word mine come out of his mouth, but in my flustered state, I could have just been imagining it. I looked up at him. Thank you so much, I choked out. He nodded. You're welcome, Amberly. Now go back to your room. He looked down the hallway. I've got some unfinished business to attend to. I will come by and check on you later. I nodded, released him, and walked back to my room silently. When I was inside, I broke down. I had so many emotions running through my mind, I didn't know what to do. I felt violated entirely to the point where I was ready to call this quits and go home, but at the same time, I didn't want to leave Felton. I loved being around him. I loved being in his arms. I loved his smell, his gentleness, everything about him. But then again, my mother told me to stay away from him, and I didn't like to defy her wishes. But this might have to be an exception. Chapter 10. I was rolling up the mat after class, and I couldn't stop thinking about Amberly. Seeing her doubled over in pain like that hurt my heart in ways I didn't know it could. It also angered me in ways I had never been angered before. It took every ounce of control in me not to destroy those two boys. How dare they hurt my mate? They were lucky they walked away from this room. I put the mat in the back room and locked up the workroom. Alpha Troyan approached me. Hello, Felton. I'm glad I caught you. Henley wanted me to give you this. He handed me a piece of paperwork to be filed. Okay, tell him I said thanks. He nodded and headed down the hallway. Henley was my beta, but since I didn't need him at this moment, and we were down an instructor, he was teaching one of our classes for the time being. I started heading up to my office when I suddenly got a terrible feeling in my gut that something was wrong. It was Amberly, I knew it was. I started sprinting down the hallway and made my way to the lobby. I sniffed the air, picking up her scent and following it. I could pinpoint her scent within a crowd of wolves. It was so distinct to me, it was like the smell of roses after a rainstorm. I followed her scent to her room hallway when I heard her scream. Blake, get off me! I looked down the hallway to see another person, another male, forcing himself on my mate. My blood boiled, and I couldn't contain the loud growl that erupted from my lips. I grabbed the boy by his neck and flung him down the hallway. He grumbled and turned to yell, but then saw me and cowered. Smart boy. It took every ounce of me not to walk down the hallway and end him right there, but the look Amberly gave me told me that I needed to stay here. She needed me, and I was going to be there for her. Are you all right? I asked her. She just stared at me, shocked. I was fixing to say something else when suddenly she wrapped her arms around my neck, hugging me. Sparks flew through my body at her warm embrace as my senses were filled with her intoxicating scent. I wrapped my arms around her and breathed in her smell. The feeling of her in my arms was breathtaking. I could feel my wolf purring in happiness. She was what I had been missing in my life. She was my missing link, and now that I had found her, I was not going to let her slip away from me. She would stay with me and become the Luna of my pack because she was mine. My eyes widened. Did I say that out loud? She looked up at me. Thank you so much, she whispered. Her voice sounded so broken, so sad. It got me angry again. That boy. He upset my mate, made her cry. Now I was going to make him regret it. You're welcome, Amberly. Now go back to your room. I looked down the hallway to see the boy gone. I've got some unfinished business to attend to. I will come by and check on you later. She released me, and I instantly wanted to wrap my arms around her tighter and not let her go, but I resisted the urge. She turned and walked back to her room without another word. Now it was time to find the boy. He wasn't hard to track. I followed his scent all the way back into the lobby, where he was talking to some other skinny boy with brown hair. I walked up to him. I need a word with you. He looked up at me and swallowed nervously. Yes, Alpha. We walked down to where the workrooms were, and I turned to face him. Would you like to explain yourself? He looked at me confused. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, boy. I clearly saw what you were doing to Amberly. And I also clearly saw that she wanted you to stop. Yet you didn't. I walked closer to him, and he backed against the wall. I'm sorry, Alpha. I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. I yelled, and he flinched. I got up in his face, looking down at him. If you touch her, talk to her, or even so much as look in her direction again, I will break you. Have I made myself clear? He swallowed again and nodded. Yes, Alpha. Good. Now scurry along." He nodded and ran off. I headed back up to Amberly's room to make sure she was okay. Chapter 11. I leaned against the wall, just letting the tears flow, when I heard a soft knock on my door. I quickly wiped away the fallen tears, but my eyes were still puffy as I opened the door. It was Felton. He instantly looked concerned. "Amberly?" I flung my arms around him and just cried. I didn't know why I was crying anymore. I think I just needed to get it out of my system. He held me while I cried, staying silent but gently rubbing my back. When I started to calm down, he looked at me. "Do you want to go for a walk?" I shook my head no. I knew if I went out into the woods, I wouldn't be able to stop Stone from taking over. "I just want to stay here, if that's okay with you." I looked down. He used his index finger to raise my head, making me look at him. "That's perfectly okay with me." I gave him a weak smile as we walked into the room. We had been in there probably 3 hours straight. My side was about to kill me. Not from my mark, but from laughing so hard. Felton was a hilarious person with a wonderful personality underneath that hard exterior. He made me feel so much better, to the point where I didn't even remember why I was upset in the first place. We had broken into my secret stash of snacks that I had packed in my bag. I brought a bag of mini candy bars, a bag of cookies, and a bag of potato chips, and we had eaten almost all of them. I opened another mini candy bar and popped it into my mouth. I then balled up the wrapper and playfully tossed it at him. It bounced off his nose, and he looked at me shocked. I burst out into another fit of giggles. He smiled. He always had this glow in his eyes when I laughed. I didn't really know why, but I loved it. "You're gonna pay for that," he said with a smile and tossed a handful of wrappers at me, making me squeal. I stood up, grabbed another handful, and threw them at him, laughing. He laughed as well. Goodness, he had the laughter of an angel. He went to throw more at me, and I tried to dodge them. I succeeded and stuck my tongue out at him. Childish, I knew, but he brought that side of me out. As a child, I was always concerned about protecting my family and fighting off rogues. I never got to be an actual child. I continued dodging his wrapper attacks until, finally, he grabbed me, wrapping his strong arms around me and looking down at me. "Where you going to go now, huh?" he said with a smile. I tried to wiggle out, but I was still pretty weak from earlier and failed. He smiled and poured the handful of wrappers on my head. I wrinkled my nose at him, and he laughed. He looked so carefree and happy like this. I wish he were like this more. He looked down at me. "So, how are you feeling?" I sighed. "A lot better than I did earlier, thanks. You've really helped me." He shot that breathtaking toothy grin at me. "It's always a pleasure." I smiled, and I didn't know what came over me, but I leaned up and kissed his cheek. "Really, Felton, I appreciate it." He looked shocked, but looked into my eyes and brushed his fingers across my cheek, sending sparks flying through my body. He slowly leaned his head in, and I leaned in as well, when Mabel unlocked the door and walked in. We both looked at her as she looked at us, completely dumbfounded. She then took in the floor around us, covered in wrappers. Well, this was awkward. "I can explain," I said to Mabel, who hadn't stopped smirking at me since Felton left. "Oh, no need, Amberly. You were just smooching on the Alpha, no big deal." She smirked again. I was not. I was, She raised an eyebrow at me. I turned my attention back to the wrappers all over the floor, and she laughed. I knew it. I just ignored her. That night, I just tossed and turned. I couldn't stop thinking about Felton. I knew I should stay away from him, but I didn't know if I could. But what if he were my mate? That meant he'd have to learn about my mark at some point, but could I handle telling someone? I had never told a soul. My family was the only one who knew. What was I going to do? I hadn't told Mabel about the Blake incident, so when we went down for breakfast the next morning, she questioned me as to why I wouldn't sit with her. "Are you mad at me?" "You never sit with me anymore," she whined. I sighed. "It's not you, I promise. I just like to sit by myself to get my thoughts together." She frowned but nodded. "Okay, I'll see you later." She skipped over to Loger and Blake, who wouldn't even glance in my direction. I took my usual empty front table and ate alone, thinking about what I should do about this whole mate situation. Our class was outside today. Felton led us down a pathway into an open field. I looked around and remembered running through this field on the way to the creek. Felton turned and faced us. I have constantly reminded all of you that shifting was not allowed while fighting until today. I want to see what each of you can do while fighting as your wolf. You will each go into the woods separately, undress and shift, then come back out. That way, no one's uniform is ruined. Afterward, you will return to the woods to get dressed. Mitchell and Josiah, you're up first. The rest of us sat to the side as the two boys walked into the woods in different areas. They returned. One was a solid white wolf with black-tipped ears and golden eyes, and the other was a brown wolf with green eyes. They began fighting, but I didn't pay much attention. The fight didn't last long. We began a routine of calling two people up. They shifted, fought, then shifted back. I leaned back against the tree, thinking when I heard my name called. Amberly and Mavis. I stood and walked to the opposite end of the woods from Mavis. I went far enough so no one could see me, then stripped down and put my clothes behind a tree. I shifted into the midnight black wolf, without the flames, of course. I walked out of the woods and I heard gasps. I was expecting that, though. I was the size of an alpha wolf, sometimes bigger depending on the alpha. I saw Felton look at me in shock, but he shook his head, looked back at his notes, and wrote something down. I saw a solid gray wolf with blue eyes approaching me. He looked like a chew toy compared to me. He also looked cute compared to me. I was about 5 feet taller than he was, and I looked down at him and snarled. He looked up and growled, but slowly backed away. I leaned down to his level and snapped at him, and he cowered away. We circled one another for a little while when he leapt at me and bit my leg. I yelped and wrapped my mouth around his neck, picking him up. He wiggled and yelped, but there was nothing he could do to get out of my grip. He whined and submitted, and I put him down. I took one look at Felton, who still had a shocked expression but was writing on his notes, and turned and walked back into the woods. I shifted back and looked for my clothes. I got to the tree I thought I put them under, but they weren't there. Where were my clothes? Chapter 12. Amberly? Are you all right in there? I heard Felton yell from the edge of the woods. I knew he couldn't see me, but it still made me nervous enough to duck behind a bush. I had looked all over this part of the woods, and I couldn't find my clothes anywhere. I knew I needed to join the rest of the class, but there was no way I was walking out there naked. I didn't have much of a choice but to tell him, I can't find my clothes. Felton was silent for a second, but I could hear a faint, low growl. Stay in there. I'll go grab you a robe. I could hear him walking away. I felt very uncomfortable standing in there naked, knowing there was a bunch of hormonal boys just on the other side of the field, so I shifted again. At least this way, they wouldn't see anything they weren't supposed to. I curled up and lay where I was standing when I heard someone entering the woods. My head perked up. Amberly? I'm leaving your robe on this tree branch. Come get it when I'm out of the woods, Felton said. I walked out anyway, still in wolf form, and grabbed the red, fluffy robe between my teeth as he was walking out. I went back to my little area, shifted back, and wrapped the robe around myself, tying the belt tightly so it stayed closed. I walked out of the woods to hear Felton talking to the group. You need to speak up now. This is not a funny joke. Whoever you are, you need to fess up now or the whole group will be doing laps around the field. Everyone was whispering amongst themselves as I walked up beside Felton. He looked down at me. Go back to your room and get dressed. He looked to the group. All right, since no one is talking, 50 laps around the field, and I'll add another 50 unless someone starts talking. Go. He growled the last word. Everyone started complaining and griping, but got up and started running as I made my way up to the room. Dinner time arrived, and I walked down to the cafeteria alone. I was pretty sure Mabel was somewhere kissing Loger. I got my food and walked over to my table, where I saw a note. My brow creased as I put my plate down and picked the note up. It was written in very neat handwriting and said, Come to the workroom during dinner. I have something I need to discuss with you. Alpha Felton. That was odd. I felt like he wouldn't have left me a note. He would have come and found me. But curiosity got the best of me, and I headed out of the cafeteria and down to the workroom. I walked into the workroom, but it looked empty. Felton. I called out. My voice echoing was my only response. I walked further into the room. Felton? Are you in here? I called out again. I suddenly heard the door slam and lock behind me. I flipped around and was met with those striking green eyes. Hello, Amberly. Chapter 13. Blake? Where's Alpha Felton? My voice didn't come out as confident as I was going for, and he picked up on that. He smirked. Your hero isn't here to save the day this time, babe. I left him a note just like I left you one. He smiled evilly at my shocked expression. Yep, he won't be anywhere around here, sugar. Just you and me. And we're about to get to know each other real well. He grinned and walked around me, circling me. What do you want, Blake? Why won't you leave me alone? He cocked his head to the side. What do I want? Sweetie, I just want to satisfy you. I care about you, Amberly, and I want to show you how much I care. He winked and put his hands on my hips. I slapped his hands off and backed away. Don't you touch me, Blake. Please don't do this. I don't want this. I yelled and continued backing away from him. He laughed. Oh, sweetie, I forgot to ask you. How are your mother and your sister doing? I stopped cold and stared at him. How did you know I have a sister? Oh, I know a lot of things about your family, Amberly. A lot of things you don't think I know. I can also do things that you don't think I can do. Now, if you care about your family, you'll be a good girl and let me take care of you. He walked closer. But if you want to continue playing hard to get, I'm going to have to force you to give me what I want. I snarled loudly, no longer backing away from him. You are not going to lay a finger on my family. He looked at me with fake hurt. Sweetheart, I'd never do such a thing. But that doesn't mean my brother wouldn't. He smirked. Now, one thing about me is that I don't care what you do to me, but I will roast in the deepest level of hell before I let someone touch my family. I snarled and lunged at Blake, tackling him to the floor. He rolled over and pinned me to the ground. Feisty little one, aren't you? He whispered in my ear while kissing my neck. I kicked him hard where it counted, and he yelped and fell to the side. I pinned him to the ground and started punching him until he was bloody and dazed. I then felt a strong arm wrap around me, pulling me off him and throwing me to the floor. Alpha Troyan. What the hell is going on here? He looked from me to Blake. She attacked me, Alpha. She called me in here and jumped me, he told Troyan. I was livid. That's a lie, and you know it. You brought me in here to threaten my family and try to force yourself on me, you sick son of a... Enough, yelled Troyan. His voice boomed through the room, and I swore I felt the room shake. He looked to me. Your accusations are a serious matter, Miss Everwood. Do you have anything to back your story? I handed him the note, and he read it. This is a note from Alpha Felton. I nodded. I know. Blake wrote the note to lure me in here, because do you see Alpha Felton anywhere? He raised his eyebrow at me. Your tone is not appreciated, young lady. And as for you, he looked to Blake, who was gone. He ran out of the room without anyone noticing. I looked to Alpha Troyan, and he squeezed the bridge of his nose in frustration. I will talk with Alpha Felton and sort this out. For now, go up to your room, and you are to stay in there until someone comes to get you. I nodded, stood, and walked to my room. I slammed the door as hard as I could and slid down the wall. I held my side, pain shooting through me like shockwaves. Why me? I got myself calmed down when I heard a knock on my door. I opened it. It was Felton, although he wasn't his well-kept, neat self. His hair was in a mess, and his clothes were torn and muddy. Felton? What happened? He looked at me. I took care of a problem. I moved out of the way to let him in, and he walked in and sat on my bed. I sat cross-legged on Mabel's bed, in front of him. Want to talk about it? He looked at me again. What did he do? I looked at him confused. Huh? He growled lowly. What did Blake do to you? He almost snarled at me. I looked down at my hands in my lap. He threatened my family. Felton snarled again but sighed. He will no longer be an issue to you. I looked up to see him staring intensely into my eyes. I was starstruck by his gaze, and all I could do was nod. He continued looking at me. Are you okay? I nodded. I'll be fine. He sighed and stood. Well, I've got to go do my rounds. It's almost curfew. Speaking of that, where's your roommate? He looked around. I shrugged. I don't know, probably off with a friend. I looked down. I knew good and well that she was with Logar, but I wasn't about to rat her out. He raised an eyebrow but decided not to comment. All right, well, I stay in room 135. Just come get me if something's wrong, okay? I nodded, and with that, he left. Chapter 14. Help! Amberly, help me! My mother screamed. I was running through the woods, trying to follow my mother's voice, but it was getting fainter and fainter. I ran as fast as my legs would carry me, burning a path as I sped through the forest. Amberly, please! My mother cried in pain, screaming my name. I could hear my sister crying, and I picked up the speed. My muscles ached, and my stamina was waning, but I kept running. I had to find them. I had to save them. Silence. Nothing, not even a squirrel running across the forest floor. There was no noise at all. All I could hear was the ringing in my ears. I came out of the woods to a clearing, to a horrific scene. My mother and my sister were gone. Lifeless. The smell of death filled the air. I howled in anger and agony and dropped to the ground. I couldn't look away from their faces, frozen in the horrified expressions they had while they took their last breaths. I heard a whisper say, "I told you what would happen, sweetie." I turned around and was met with those striking green eyes and that devilish smirk. I sat up in bed, completely out of breath, covered in my own sweat and tears. I looked around, completely disoriented. I was in my room. I looked at the clock on the bedside table, 2:03 a.m. I relaxed, the realization just now hitting me that it was all a dream. I ran my hands through my thick hair. There was no way I was going back to sleep after that. I stood, my nightgown going halfway down my thighs, and walked quietly over to the door, trying not to wake Mabel. I opened the door and looked up and down the hallway. It was empty. I tiptoed out, quietly closed the door behind me, and started walking. I wrapped my arms around myself, using one hand to rub my aching mark. I wasn't really sure where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that tiny room. I needed some fresh air. I walked down the stairs and reached the main hallway, where the bathrooms were. I got about halfway down the hallway when I heard someone call my name. Amberly? What are you doing out of your room at this time of night? I turned and found Felton shirtless. I couldn't help but stare at his bare chest. He had a very defined six-pack and extremely muscular arms. And I thought he was fantastic looking, fully dressed. His expression turned from one of confusion to one of worry very quickly when he saw my puffy eyes. What's wrong? What happened? He made his way down the hallway and stood in front of me. I tore my eyes away from him and shook my head. Nothing, I just need some, fresh air. I'll walk with you then. I sighed, not really in the mood to argue, and we walked outside together. There was a slight breeze, and it smelled of woods and Felton scent. We walked down a little pathway, and I looked at him out of the corner of my eye. He walked so gracefully, yet I stumbled around like I had two left feet. It just wasn't fair. I saw him look at me, his eyes slightly darker than before, and I quickly darted my eyes away, looking through the forest. "Are you sure nothing's bothering you?" he asked curiously. I sighed. "I just don't really want to talk about it." He looked down and nodded. The path brought us back to where we started as we walked in silence. We ended up back at the building, and we walked up to the front door. He opened the door for me, and as I walked in, I felt his hand on the small of my back, guiding me inside. I gasped as the sparks went off like fireworks and shook my head to clear it. He kept his hand on my back as we walked. We got back to my room, and he faced me. "You okay to go back in there now?" I looked down but nodded. "Yeah, I'll be okay." I rubbed my own arms, which I still had wrapped around myself. He nodded and glided his fingers over my cheek. I felt the sparks fly, and I instinctively leaned my face into his fingers. I could feel those deep blue eyes staring straight into my soul. He placed that hand on the back of my neck, slowly leaned down, put his other hand on my waist, and kissed me. The sparks that went through my body were intense. He was so passionate, yet so gentle in the kiss, and I wrapped my arms around his neck. I let out a soft sigh as the kiss deepened. After a while, he broke away and left small kisses down my neck as I pulled him closer to me. He pulled away after a while and looked me in the eyes. And that's when I suddenly came to my senses. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we did that. I can't do that. This isn't right. I pushed him away, and he looked back at me, completely shocked. Amberly. No, please. I'm sorry. I walked into my room, still quietly enough that I didn't wake Mabel as I tried to catch my breath. I couldn't let that happen again. No. I couldn't be his mate. It just wasn't possible. I was no one's mate. I was meant to stay with my family and protect them. I didn't want to be part of a pack. I didn't want to be a Luna. I didn't want him, or anybody for that matter, to know about my mark about me. Yet what just happened out in that hallway? It felt so right. What was I going to do? Chapter 15. Wakey wakey. Time to get up. Mabel sang while pulling back the blinds. I growled as the light burned my eyes. I pulled the covers over my head and she yanked them back down. Come on, sleepyhead. Time to get up. She grabbed my extra pillow and smacked me with it. I groaned. Oh my goodness, are you always this annoying in the mornings? She nodded. Yep. Come on, you just have enough time to shower and be down for breakfast. After showering and getting dressed, we headed down to the cafeteria for breakfast. I had decided to wear shorts today, mainly because I hadn't gotten the chance to wash my other uniform pants. Mabel looked over at me. Oh dude, did you hear about Blake? I froze and cleared my throat nervously. What happened? Apparently he got into a fight with Alpha Felton. I don't know what it was over, but he was in a rage about it. He was kicked from boot camp. I nodded, relaxed by the fact that he was indeed gone for good. Oh wow, was my only reply. I decided to sit with her and Loger today because, since Blake was gone, I didn't have to worry about him, and also I didn't want to sit any closer to the Alpha's table than I had to. I had spent almost the rest of the night contemplating my situation with Felton. I finally had to admit to myself that I did have feelings for him. I couldn't talk myself out of that. But at the same time, I didn't believe I could ever be his mate. He deserved someone who could be honest with him about everything, and I couldn't do that. I didn't belong in a pack. I belonged with my family. There were just too many issues for me to see this end well in the long run, so I might as well not even start it. Breakfast was over all too soon, and I slowly made my way to class, taking my time to ensure that I wasn't the first person there. I walked in to find a good-sized group already there, and no Felton. I took my seat in the back corner of the group as we waited for our instructor. When he arrived, he didn't bother coming in front of the class, but stayed by the door. Class, due to unforeseen issues, we will have to have class outside today. We will be working on stamina, so we will be running laps. Let's go. He did not sound or look very happy. That hard, cold exterior was back. A couple of the guys let out a groan, but we all stood and walked towards the door. I kept my head down as I walked by Felton, feeling his eyes bore into me. We all got outside, and I heard some of the boys yell in excitement. What was going on? My head shot up to see a bunch of random older people outside. And just then, I spotted my mom and sister in the back. I pushed past some of the guys. Mom, Lexa. I grabbed their attention as my smile could rip my face in half. I bear-hugged my mother, who laughed and hugged me back. Hey, sweetie. How have you been doing? She pulled back and looked at me as I explained everything that had happened so far in camp. She listened and made a few comments here and there, then Lexa held her hands out for me. Wolfie. I smiled and picked her up. Hey there, Pipsqueak, long time no see. She giggled and wrapped her little arms around me as I hugged her tightly, tears of happiness streaming down my face. I held Lexa on my hip, her legs wrapped around my waist, as I talked to my mother. I felt like it had been ages, but it had only been a little over a week. I saw Felton walk outside, smiling. I gestured toward my mother with my head. That's him, I said lowly. She looked at him, then back at me. That's your supposed mate? I nodded, and she sighed. I knew this day would come sooner or later. Have you been marked? I shook my head no, and she relaxed. So I'm guessing he doesn't know? I shook my head again. She nodded. Are you planning on telling him? I sighed. I'm not sure yet. I explained my thoughts to her, and she listened attentively. When I finished my rant, she sighed. Honey, I may not know everything about werewolves, but I know that mates are for life. You only get one in your lifetime. And if you feel this strongly about him, maybe you should give it a shot. I was shocked. My mother had told me my entire life to hide my mark, never tell anyone. When I was younger, she made me wear one-piece bathing suits to cover my mark when we went swimming in the lake. She always told me it was too dangerous and wasn't worth the risk, and now she was telling me to trust a person I've only known for a week? I nodded and rubbed Lexa's back, humming. I looked down at her and she was sleeping. You know she's barely gotten any sleep since you've been gone. She says it's because you're not there to sing her to sleep. I looked down at her. Well, I'm here now and I'll sing to her as much as she wants me to. We both smiled at sleeping Lexa. After a while, we were all called back inside for lunch, including the parents. My mom made a plate for Lexa and she sat on my lap while we ate. Mabel walked up with her parents. Amberly, this is my mom Abigail and my dad Jefferson. Mom, Dad, this is my roommate Amberly. I smiled. Nice to meet you. This is my mom Kara and my sister Lexa. My mother smiled and Lexa gave a toothy grin and waved. They smiled and waved back. Nice to meet you too, they said. After lunch, our parents were escorted to their rooms, where they would be staying the weekend. Lexa cried when she realized I had to go back to class without her, but I promised her I would be back for dinner and sing her to sleep tonight. We all went back to class to see Felton waiting for us. I hope you all enjoyed seeing your families. Now we need to get back to work. I decided to talk to Felton after dinner. I'm not going to tell him about my mark yet, but I want to speak to him about this whole mate thing. I picked at my food, not really hungry at the moment, while Lexa sat on my lap. Aren't you going to eat? The food's amazing here, my mother said. I smiled. Not nearly as good as your cooking. She smiled with a toothy grin. You're too sweet, honey. After dinner, I escorted my mom and Lexa back to their room. I had told my mother my plan to talk to Felton. She hugged me. Good luck, sweetie, and remember, no matter what happens, I will always love you. She kissed the side of my head and I smiled. Thank you, Mom. I love you too. She walked inside and I put Lexa down and hugged her. I'll be back tonight to sing you to sleep, okay? She smiled at me. I could see she had recently lost a tooth. Okay, Wolfie, she whispered in my ear. I let her go and she ran inside to Mom. I started down the hallway. I looked just about everywhere for Felton, and I couldn't find him. He wasn't at dinner. He wasn't in his room. The only other place to check was the workroom. I walked down that hallway to see the light on. Maybe he was doing last-minute preparations for tomorrow's class? I knocked on the door and opened it. Felton? I need to talk. I was stopped dead in my tracks at the scene in front of me. I saw Felton holding another girl against the wall, her legs wrapped around his waist, kissing her neck. They both looked at me when I walked in shock. I was frozen in my spot, just staring. Amberly? This isn't what it looks like. I bolted back out the door, tears streaming down my face. I could hear Felton run out the door behind me. Amberly, please let me explain. But he was too late. I was already out the front door, shifted, and gone. Chapter 16. I collapsed from exhaustion on my sister's bed. Wolfie, can you sing to me now? I sighed. I was really not in the mood to do anything but curl into a ball and cry, but for Lexa, I would do anything. I sat up and let her crawl into bed. I sat next to her and scratched her back gently as I started singing. I'll be there. Close your eyes, and you'll see me. Just call my name. When I finished the song, she was in a deep sleep. I sighed and went to lie on my mother's bed. Not long after Lexa fell asleep, Mom came walking back in from the shower. I motioned for her to be quiet, and she tiptoed over to me. Are you okay? How'd your talk with Fel? Mom, with all due respect, I really don't want to talk about it right now. She nodded, taking the hint. Mom got ready for bed, and I stood and stretched. I'm going back to my room. Good night. I hugged her and she kissed my forehead. Good night, sweetie. I love you. I smiled. I love you too. I walked over to Lexa and kissed her on the top of her head, then silently walked out. I walked down the hallway, rubbing my mark. I had never figured out why, but it was always sore after I shifted. I got into my room to see that Mabel was already asleep. I crawled into my bed, pulled the covers over my head, and just cried. How could a person I had only known for a week hurt me like this? This aching pain in my chest was almost unbearable. I had never let someone in before. Because of who I was or what I was, I had always had my walls up for the world. I had friends that I had known since my mother found me, and if they were to walk out of my life now, I'd be helping them pack their bags. I didn't do relationships, and this was exactly why. Stone had been howling in pain ever since I ran out of the workroom. Hearing my wolf in so much pain broke my heart more than it was already broken. I guess I wasn't his mate after all. I got no sleep last night. Nada. Stone kept me up with her constant howling and whining. I rolled over to see that it was 6:10 a.m. Might as well go take a shower. I grabbed my uniform and shower stuff and headed to the bathrooms. I stood underneath the water, letting it wash away all my dried tears and broken feelings. I got dressed and headed back to my room to wake Mabel up. I shook her shoulder gently. Mabel? It's time to wake up. It's 6:30 a.m. She groaned but rolled over and looked at me, observing my wet hair. Have you already showered? She asked, sitting up. I nodded, and she looked at me surprised. You were actually up before me? I'm impressed, Everwood. She smirked. I shrugged. I never actually went to sleep. Her brow creased. Why? I shook my head. I don't want to talk about it. We went down to the cafeteria and grabbed some breakfast. We sat at our usual table and looked around. I tried to avoid the Alpha's table, but I couldn't help but glance over there. Felton was the only one missing. Probably kissing that girl before class, I thought. My wolf and I both cringed at that thought, but I sighed, knowing it was probably true. I strolled to class. As the days went by, I was beginning to dread this class more and more. I walked inside and joined the rest of the class, taking my usual spot in the back. Felton walked in just as always, 8:30 a.m. on the dot. He delivered his usual speech in a monotone, not even looking at the class. He then paired us up and had us fight each other. He paired me up with his beta since we had an uneven number, and he no longer had to fill in for a missing instructor. He put up a good fight, but I took him down without much struggle. I could feel Felton's eyes burning a hole in my back, but I refused to look at him. Felton rotated us now and then when Alpha Christopher walked in, asking to talk to him. They spoke, but I didn't care enough to listen to what they were saying, so I kept fighting my opponent. Henley! Felton yelled. His beta ran over to him. So that's what his name was. He sent Henley with Alpha Christopher and took on his spot while he was gone. We all continued fighting for a while, then he would have us switch. This went on for the whole class, but since I had already fought Henley, I never got the chance to fight him. That was probably for the best, though. Class ended, and we all grabbed our stuff and got ready for lunch. Amberly? I turned to see Felton walking towards me. Can I have a moment? I raised my eyebrow and shook my head. No. I headed out the door when he grabbed my shoulder and turned me around. Amberly, please. I need to talk to you. I leaned in like I was going to kiss his cheek, but whispered in his ear. Too bad. I turned to walk away again. Amberly Everwood. I stopped walking. Are you defying an order from your Alpha? I turned my head to look back at him. Yep. I made sure to pop the P at the end, then turned and strutted down the hallway, leaving him with a shocked expression. Chapter 17. I picked at my lunch, listening to Mabel ramble on and on about her date with Logar this weekend. On the weekends, they allowed us out of the training building as long as we stayed in the boundaries of the Pack territory, and apparently, Logar was taking her to some fancy restaurant. She seemed very excited, and I felt bad. I felt happy for her, but this whole situation with Felton had really made my mood plummet. She was telling me about her outfit plans when I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Alpha Christopher. I looked up at him. Yes, Alpha. He handed me a slip of paper and walked away. I looked at Mabel, confused, then opened the folded paper. It said notice at the top. Long story short, it said I needed to report to Alpha Felton for punishment due to defying a direct order from an instructor. You have got to be kidding me. I groaned angrily. Mabel looked at me confused. What's wrong? I showed her the note, and she raised her eyebrows. Sounds serious. I hope you aren't in a lot of trouble. Oh, I'm not the one in trouble in this situation, I muttered, mostly to myself. I stood and walked away before Mabel could comment. I made my way over to the Alpha's table, right up to Felton. The Alphas went silent at my approach, and Felton looked up at me with a mouthful of food. I handed him the note, and he read it. He finished eating and cleared his throat. Please excuse me, gentlemen, he said, rising and walking away from the table, with me following close behind. He took me to the workroom and closed the door behind us. I glared at him with my most menacing face, arms folded. What's my punishment? I said, trying to keep my voice monotone. He sighed, hearing me out. I rolled my eyes and stared at him. He walked closer to me slowly, and I backed up, keeping distance between us. I know this is going to sound cliché, but she came on to me. She was sent to talk to me over an altercation that happened outside of the classroom, and one thing led to another. And her tongue ended up down your throat. Makes sense, I snapped. He closed his eyes, trying to contain his anger. After a minute, he opened his eyes again and looked at me. I thought you had rejected me, Amberly. I didn't know what to do. I've never been told no before. Obviously. I rolled my eyes. He continued to look at me, his expression softening. Can we just start this over? Please. I looked at him, his expression pleading. The look in his eyes told me he was sincere, but this was not something I could move past easily. I sighed. You're gonna have a hell of a lot of making up to do. His eyes shot up, almost surprised. But there's a chance? I sighed and nodded. He grinned that breathtakingly toothy grin and wrapped his arms around my waist, resting his head in the crook of my neck. I'm so sorry, Amberly. I promise to never hurt you again, he whispered as he rubbed my back, sending sparks flying through my body. I nodded. Class went relatively smoothly. Felton was teaching us how to block and attack properly. After showing us the proper technique, he paired us up and had us practice. Since we had a missing student, which Felton was not happy about, the numbers were even. I was paired with the sloppy, lazy, dirty blonde-haired guy that tried to hit on me the first day. Great. He swung a fist at me, and I blocked it accordingly, which wasn't difficult considering this dude moved at the pace of a turtle. I swung a fist and connected with his lower jaw, throwing him completely off his feet. He looked at me in shock, and I raised an eyebrow at him. He tried to sweep my feet out from under me, but I moved too quickly. He leapt up and threw a kick straight at my face. I dodged it and looked at him, bewildered. Weren't we supposed to be working on blocking punches? Class ended, and we were dismissed to dinner. Felton grabbed my shoulder as I was about to walk out. He turned me around to face him. What are your plans for tonight? I thought for a second, then shrugged. I don't have any. Mabel's got a hot date tonight, and my mom and sister are getting ready to head back home, I said sadly. He nodded. Let me take you out tonight. I looked at him confused. He smiled. Go get dressed and be in the lobby in an hour. Then he walked out the door. Dressed? Dressed for what? Amberly, you look gorgeous. Mabel squealed as she released the last curl of my hair from the curling iron. She had given me a short, black, lacy dress with 2-inch black heels. Have I mentioned that this dress was short? And I mean short. It barely covered anything. Mabel, if I was to sit down in this, my entire butt would fall out. She snorted. Oh please, it's just long enough to cover the goodies, but short enough to keep things interesting. She winked, and I gaped at her. I must admit that the tight dress flattered my curves wonderfully, and she did a fantastic job on my hair and makeup, even though she burned me 4 times and almost poked my eye out with the eyeliner. I looked at the time. Darn, I gotta go. Thank you again, Mabel. You're a lifesaver. I hugged her, and she smiled and hugged back. That's what I'm here for. I smiled. Have fun with Loger tonight. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. I winked at her, and she smirked. Oh, I'm sure we will be doing everything that you don't do. My jaw dropped, and she laughed. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Now go. Don't want to keep the alpha waiting. I smiled and walked out the door. I made my way to the lobby when I spotted Felton standing by the front desk. He was dressed in a lovely black suit with a white shirt. The suit hugged his muscles deliciously, and all I could do was stare at the marvelous man in front of me. He suddenly caught sight of me, and his eyes widened. He blinked twice before shaking his head and walking over to me, wrapping his arms around me. You look incredible, he whispered in my ear. I blushed crimson red but smiled. You're not too bad yourself. He smiled and held his hand out for me. I smiled back and took his hand, and we strolled out the front door. 3 hours had passed, and we arrived back at the training building. Felton had taken me to a small, intimate restaurant. We spent the time getting to know each other. I learned about his past, how his father used to beat his mother, and how one day his mother finally got the guts to leave, but she left him with his father. His father blamed him for his mother's leaving and beat him whenever he got the chance. The pack was in decline when his father abandoned it, distraught over losing his mate. Felton had to practically rebuild the pack from the ground up, which he was pretty proud of. I didn't blame him either. He was a powerful man, both mentally and physically. I was still careful about what I told him, still not fully trusting him enough to tell him about my mark, but I told him about how I was abandoned at birth. I also told him something I've never told anyone else. That my mother killed my father because he assaulted me when I was 13 years old. We didn't bring him up anymore, and I still didn't know what she did with the body. This made Felton unbelievably livid, but there was nothing he could do since the man was dead. He held me for the longest time after that story. We made it back to the training building, laughing and carrying on. We walked up to his suite, and he unlocked the door and held it open for me. I smiled and walked in, relieved that I could finally remove these awful shoes. I knew they were only 2 inches high, but I was used to no shoes at all. I had never worn heels before, and I tripped twice. Felton's suite was huge, but that didn't surprise me. He was the alpha, after all. He had his own kitchen, bathroom, and a bedroom with a king-sized mattress. I looked to Felton, who had removed his suit jacket, unbuttoned his sleeves, and undone the top 2 buttons of his shirt. I smiled at him. Thanks for tonight. I had a lot of fun. He smiled back. The pleasure's all mine, Amberly. He smirked at me, then strolled over and placed his hands on my hips. Have I told you how amazing you look in that dress? He whispered while he lowered his head to kiss my neck softly. I smiled. I think that's the 7th time you told me tonight. I raised my head, allowing him more access. A low growl built in his chest. You know, guys were gawking at you at the restaurant. They watched your every move. It made me so mad. He walked forward, making me step back, and my back hit the wall. I don't like other guys looking at you like that. Only I should look at you like that, he whispered while continuing to kiss down my neck to my collarbone, while his hands played with the bottom of my dress. I had my hands on the back of his neck and my head against the wall. He growled lowly, leaned down, grabbed the back of my thighs, and lifted me up, wrapping my legs around his waist as he held me against the wall. I gasped when he lifted me, as it hitched my already short dress up even more. I sighed as his lips hit my sweet spot on my neck, and he smirked but continued talking. I will be the only one to see you like this, to even think of you like this. Is that understood? He kissed my sweet spot again, and I suppressed a moan. Yes, I squeaked out. He smirked. Yes, what? I cleared my throat, hoping to sound more confident this time. Yes, Alpha. I heard a low growl within his chest as he hoisted me up into his arms and brought me over to the king-size bed. He lay me down and straddled me. He leaned down and kissed me passionately as my hands reached for his shirt. I unbuttoned his shirt and threw it off his shoulders. I ran my hands over his perfectly defined muscles, and he groaned. He reached behind me for the zipper on my dress when suddenly my instincts kicked in. Felton, wait. He suddenly froze, looking at me confused. I pushed him off of me and sat up, zipping my dress back up, making sure my mark was covered. I then looked back at him. His eyes didn't meet mine, and they seemed to have hurt and rejection filled in them. I sighed. I guess it was now or never. Felton, I need to tell you something. Chapter 18. I shot up out of bed. I swore I heard something at the door. I looked over and saw Felton still sound asleep. I sighed and ran my hands through my hair when I heard a banging on the door. Alpha Felton. Wake up. It sounded like Henley. I looked at the clock and it was 1 in the morning. What could he want this early? I leaned over and shook Felton gently. Felton, wake up. I think something's wrong. He groaned as Henley banged on the door more. This got his attention, and he flew out of bed, ran to the door, and opened it. Henley? What's wrong? I was trying to contact you through the mind link, but you were asleep. Rogues have attacked Alpha. They're right outside the building now. Felton's eyes went wide as he shut the door, leaving me on my own in his room as he talked to Henley. Rogues were here? I looked out the window into the night, and I could see figures running around outside the building, looking for an entrance. The guards had gone into lockdown and barricaded the doors so no one could come or go. I growled. I could take down these rogues easily, but not without exposing myself to the entire pack. I wasn't going to jump to that solution just yet, but if the time called for it, I wouldn't hesitate. Suddenly, a deafening sound came from the lobby. It sounded like an explosion. I yelped, the loud noise hurting my ears. I opened the door to see Felton running towards the lobby, Henley following close behind. I took off after them. Screaming was all I heard as I ran into the lobby. The barricade had been broken, and a rogue had squeezed through the opening and attacked one of the Alphas, Alpha Christopher. He took him off guard and had taken a knife and slashed at his back. Felton grabbed the rogue and ended him without a second thought as everyone surrounded the wounded Alpha. The doctor was trying to help but couldn't stop the bleeding. He's not going to make it. One of the girls screamed, and then everyone broke into a frenzy. Everyone surrounded the Alpha, screaming and crying. I pushed my way through the crazed crowd. An Alpha was not going to die on my watch, especially not one I knew. I made my way to Christopher, my skin already heating up. I placed my hand on Christopher's shoulder, and I heard him cry out from the heat. I knew it was going to burn, but it would also save his life. I gently ran my hand across his wound, sealing it, healing it. When I got to his hip, his wound was completely sealed. I stood and let myself get pushed back into the still frenzied crowd as I prepared to make my departure. I noticed a few people, Felton included, staring at me with wide eyes. I expected that. Fire wolves were the stuff of legends. We had always kept to ourselves, so no one knew that we actually existed. I made eye contact with Felton, who stared at me with his jaw wide open. I knew he knew. I turned and ran down the hallway to my room. The barricade on the door was back up, but there weren't any on the windows. I got to my room and threw the window open, leaping out. It was then that I realized I was on the 3rd floor. I landed on the ground and rolled so I wouldn't hurt anything. The rogues immediately surrounded me, all trying to take their turn taking me down. They were only around me, maybe 3 seconds before a shockwave of fire shot them all back, scorching them. A few others tried to fight me, but they were no match for me. The ones who didn't fight me turned and ran, fearing for their lives. I contemplated following them, but decided against it when I saw Felton walk out of the barricade, his eyes getting even wider. I stared at him before turning my back and fleeing the scene. He could try to chase me, but the smoke trailing behind me would completely take over my scent, leaving him nothing to track. And like that, I was gone. Chapter 19. I hadn't done what I just did in a long time. I had just killed all those rogues. I had just exposed myself to an entire pack. I had justified every rule my mother had ever set for me. Why did I have to be like this? Why was I chosen to carry this burden? I shifted back to human form and wrapped a robe around myself. I had found it in the woods a while back, apparently left from one of the shifting sessions the Alphas had. I continued walking until I caught a familiar scent. I turned and was met once again with those striking green eyes. Hello, Amberly. Miss me? I growled. What are you doing here, Blake? He laughed. I'm simply here for revenge. You see, you were meant to be mine. We were made for each other. We are the same species. My eyes widened as he lifted his shirt and turned to the side, where I saw the 3 claw marks on his hip. He was a fire wolf. I gasped as he smirked. How did you know I was? I was the one who stole your uniform that day. I saw your mark before you shifted. That's how I knew we were meant to be together, but you rejected me. And it was his fault. He glared in the direction of the training building. My brow creased. Even if we are the same, Blake, you are not my mate, and I am not yours. That does not change now. He glared at me, his eyes turning a mixture of blood red and solid black. Well, then I guess I'll just have to kill you. If I can't have you, no one can. He shifted straight into his fire wolf and lunged at me. We both fell to the ground as he tried to pin me down. I shoved my knee into his stomach and pushed him off of me. I shifted into my fire wolf and snarled at him. Oh, this was going to end badly. He lunged at me again, this time clamping his jaws around my neck. I snarled, but every time I moved, he tightened his grip. I whimpered as I tried to claw him, but he stepped on my arm, breaking it. I yelped as his grip tightened. I started to see black spots in my vision as I felt warm liquid flow through my fur. In a last attempt to save my own life, knowing that the mark is a weak spot in any fire wolf, I kicked him with all my might in his hip. He yelped and released me. I shoved him off, and he stumbled back, whimpering. I gathered the energy to lunge at him, grasping his neck in my jaws and ending the fight instantly. He went limp in my grip. I dropped him and lay down, whimpering. I licked my arm in an attempt to treat the wound, but it was of no use. I needed a doctor. The black spots in my vision told me I didn't have long before I passed out, so I stood and tried to limp my way back to the closest place that had a doctor. The training building. I didn't even know if I should be going back. They probably thought I was a monster now, a killing machine. I wasn't naive. I had been told all the urban legends just like they were about fire wolves, only they were not urban legends to me. They were my history. Anyone in power became a ruthless warrior, which was part of the reason why I never wanted to lead a pack. I never wanted to be like my ancestors. But I guess that was inevitable. I didn't even know if they would help me. Why would they? I had just taken down at least 50 people without blinking an eye. I wanted help. I wanted to be saved. But was I really worth saving? Or would it be better if I died with my stories? I didn't have much more time to think. I had made it halfway back to the training building when everything went black and I collapsed from blood loss. Chapter 20. Beep, beep, beep. I could hear the beating of a heart monitor and the humming of the nurse's office lights. I had no idea how long I had been stuck in the darkness, but I clung to the sound of these two things. They were the only things I knew were real now. I had experienced horrible nightmares. Some felt so real that I was actually worried for my own safety. I tried to open my eyes or move my limbs, but my body wouldn't cooperate until now. I took a deep breath and slowly opened my eyes, immediately blinded by the bright lights of the nurse's office. After a minute of my eyes adjusting, I looked at myself, inspecting the damage. I seemed to have a slashed neck from Blake's teeth, an arm that was utterly broken, and my entire body was practically blue, black, and purple from bruises. I also took note that I was in nothing but a hospital gown, but that didn't bother me. Everyone here already knew. I sighed and went to sit up. I looked around and saw Felton sitting in a chair across the room, sleeping soundly. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. I couldn't help but stare at him. The nurse knocked on the door and walked in, bowing her head in respect. Hello, Miss Everwood. How are you feeling right now? I sighed. I've seen better days. I flinched as she inspected my broken arm. Do you need some more pain medicine? I shook my head, but I saw her inject something into my fore anyway. She looked back at me. Do you need anything else, Miss Everwood? I shook my head, and she bowed her head once more, then walked out. I was looking out the window when I heard Felton stirring in the chair. I looked over to be met with his sleepy eyes opening. He found me awake and shot up out of the chair. Amberly? Are you okay? How are you feeling? I nodded. I'm fine, Felton. He glared at my injuries. You don't look fine. I leaned back again and looked up at him. I'll be okay in time. He sighed, his face looking sad. Why did you run? My brow creased as I looked at him, confused. What do you mean? I mean, why did you leave, Amberly? The direction you were running was leading you straight out of the pack territory. Why did you want to leave? He looked almost in pain. I looked down. I thought it would be for the best. He took my hand, and I winced slightly. He immediately let me go and looked down at his hands. Why didn't you tell me? I looked back up. Tell you what? That you're a firewolf. I sighed. I knew this question was coming. I've never told anyone, Felton. Ever. The only people who know are my direct family. None of my aunts or uncles or anyone like that knows. None of my friends know. My mother raised me to never tell anyone. And so when I found out you were my mate, I was completely torn, and that's why I never let you mark me. I wasn't about to let you claim me as a mate without telling you what I am. I was scared that you would reject me. I kept my eyes down, looking at my fingers in my lap. He used his index finger to raise my head to look at him. Amberly, this doesn't make me look at you any differently. You're still that beautiful, strong girl who caught my eye the first day of camp. And nothing will change that, ever. I love you, Amberly. He looked down at his lap when he said that. His words echoed in my head. I love you, Amberly. I never thought I would see the day when someone other than family said those words to me. I loved the way it sounded. I loved the way he said my name. I loved him. I love you too, Felton. I saw him close his eyes and shake his head a little. When he opened them, they were darker than before, but that quickly went away, and he smiled. How are you feeling now? The nurse asked, re-entering the room. Better than before. I sat up and swung my legs over the bedside. The nurse nodded. Your vital signs are now intact, so you are free to sign out when you're ready. I smiled and nodded. Thank you. She bowed her head, then left. I took Felton's hand, and we walked out of the nurse's office. It was completely dark outside. Goodness, how long had I been out? We walked back hand in hand to Felton's room. He unlocked the door, and we stepped inside. He shut the door, walked up behind me, and hugged me gently. I'm glad you're okay, he whispered while trailing small kisses down my neck. I leaned into his touch. He knew my biggest secret, and he accepted it. He accepted me, and I loved him so much. We stayed together that night, peaceful and content. I was finally happy. Epilogue. 5 years later. Trent, please be careful with Isadora. I snapped as I was trying to cook dinner. Sorry, Mommy. 4-year-old Trent sat on the ground with his 2-year-old sister, Isadora. He tickled her stomach, and she giggled. I couldn't help but smile. I continued cooking when I heard Isadora squeal in pain. I turned around to see a small burn mark rising on her side. Trent, what did I just say? I walked over and picked up a crying Isadora. He looked down. Sorry, Mommy. I looked at him. Go get your father, please. I need to run Isadora to the nurse, and I need him to watch the food. Trent nodded and ran upstairs. Goodness, who knew raising a werewolf and a firewolf could be so difficult? I smelled Felton's scent getting stronger as he walked down the stairs holding Trent on his hip. He looked at me and then at Isadora. What happened? He put Trent down, who ran to go play with his fire truck, then walked over and took Isadora from me. She instantly calmed down when she was in his arms. She was definitely going to be a daddy's girl. Trent got a little too rough with his sister. I'm going to run her to the nurse, but I need you to watch the stove. His brow creased. Why can't you heal her? I sighed. She's not a fire wolf, and at this age, the heat I need to use to heal her could overheat her. He growled lowly. I knew it wasn't geared towards me, but I still flinched slightly. He nodded. I can take her. I nodded, and he pecked my lips, then walked out. Mommy, can we go outside, please? Trent asked while I was cleaning up the dinner dishes. I sighed. Felton, could you take Trent over to the park? I'll be there with Isadora as soon as these dishes are done. He nodded, picked up Trent, and held him high in the air. Trent let out a loud giggle. He put him back down, took his hand, and they left. Trent waved at me with a big goofy grin, and I smiled and waved back. I walked up to the park with Isadora silently napping in my arms. As I walked by people, they bowed their heads in respect. Firewolves were on the same level as alphas, so people treated them with the same respect. I was also the Luna of the pack, and I was pretty sure Felton wouldn't be too happy with any disrespect. I saw Felton sitting on the bench watching as Trent played with the other children. I took a seat next to Felton, who wrapped his arm protectively around Isadora and me. I smiled at him, and he kissed my forehead, then leaned down to kiss a sleeping Isadora on the forehead. "I love you guys so much," Felton said, and I blushed. "We love you too." Trent ran over and plopped down between Felton and me. "Hi, Mommy. When did you get here?" I smiled. "Just now." I kissed his cheek, and he scrunched up his nose. "Ew, Mommy, you have cooties," he yelled as he tried to squirm away from me. Felton burst out laughing as I continued kissing his cheek while Trent squirmed and giggled. I started laughing and hugged Trent. We all sat on the bench and watched the sun go down. I looked over at Trent, who was playing with an inchworm that he found, as Felton watched with amusement in his eyes. I then turned to look at a stirring Isadora in my arms. I smiled to myself. I loved my family so much, and I would do everything in my power to protect them. Always.